So if you own an 09 to 14 SuperCrew F150 and you often take your truck through some debris or you go off-road often, then you've probably been looking around for some rocker panel armor, but you might have seen that it's very difficult to find some actual armor that also incorporates a step, right? Well, I'm happy to say that N-Fab, who is a very big manufacturer of armor, by the way, has come up with a pretty cool solution with these side rails here. They also include this nice detachable step. Now, what's cool about this is you really don't lose any ground clearance, and that's because the construction of this is kind of reversed from a standard running board. Usually what happens with running boards or side steps is the bracket itself actually comes down underneath the stepping area, and that thing will definitely catch on rocks and debris. So while it might provide some armor against light strikes in the parking lot, you can't really take your truck off-road because it kind of interferes with ground clearance. Now, that's not the case here. What's nice about these is the brackets are actually tucked up above the side rail itself, so if you remove the step, you don't lose any ground clearance whatsoever. Now, as far as how these stand up in terms of armor, I'm happy to say that they're very well built. These tubes here are just shy of 2 inches in diameter, and they're pretty heavy-duty steel, actually. The way they secure to the truck is pretty nice as well. They have some heavy-duty carriage bolts and hex head bolts, so it's safe to say that these things are not going to flex and they're not going to go anywhere. Now, they are finished off in a really nice black powder coat finish. Powder coat is a baked-on finish. It's not just a painted finish, so if you do get any strikes against this thing on the trails, it's safe to say that these things will be up to the task. Now, if you do want to step on there, obviously, that's where this guy comes in, right? Pretty heavy-duty step here, same tubular construction, really thick brackets here, and I'm happy to say that the step itself is certainly heavy-duty. It's made out of 1/8-inch thick plate steel with these nice little perforations here, so if you got mud on your boots from the work site or you're going out in the snow, you won't have to worry about slipping on this thing. Now, N-Fab is one of the top-tier brands when it comes to building armor and steps. Now, as far as price goes, I'm happy to say that these guys are very affordable, and honestly, for a 2-for-1 deal in terms of armor and steps, that's pretty hard to beat, right? A lot of steps with this build quality or a lot of armor with this build quality come in at around this price point or a little bit higher, and N-Fab is definitely a top-tier brand, but they're honestly beating out a lot of the competition at this price point. The last reason I really like this armor step combo in particular is because it installs very easily. I mentioned those carriage bolts and hex head bolts earlier, and if you didn't guess by now, it is a very simple bolt-on job. Besides quality and overall affordability, I'm happy to say that the install is very straightforward as well. If you didn't guess by now, it is a bolt-on job. They're a little bit heavy though, so I'm going to give the install a modest 2 out of 3 wrenches on my difficulty meter, but honestly, it shouldn't take you more than an hour or two to get both sides done in the driveway. Stick around a little bit longer, I'm going to show you exactly what tools you need, and I'm going to walk you through the entire install. To install your new side steps and rails, you will need the following tools: a standard drive ratchet, a 13mm socket, a 14mm socket, and a 19mm socket and wrench. Optional tools include an impact gun and impact swivel. All right, so we have our truck up on the lift. Obviously, you guys can do this on the ground if you want to, but we wanted to make sure we get a good, clear view of what we're working with. That way you guys know what you should do at home. Now, before you actually install the rail itself with the carriage bolts, you gotta put these speed clips in the top holes on the rocker panel itself. In the case of our 2010 truck, we actually don't have holes for the center bracket. That's okay though, because the carriage bolts that we throw on there in a little bit will be more than adequate. All right, now that we have our speed clips in place, we can throw the rail up in place and we can secure it to the pinch seam using the carriage bolts and corresponding nuts. There's 2 holes on the bottom of the pinch seam for each bracket, and this thing is a little bit heavy, so just take your time when you're getting this thing in place. All right, once you got those carriage bolts and nuts in place on that first bracket, go ahead and do the same thing for the other 2 brackets and you'll be good on the bottom portion. Then you're gonna grab the hex head bolts and flat washers in the kit. You're gonna shove these into those speed clips that we installed earlier. Again, you're only doing the rear and the front brackets. We're avoiding that center bracket in the case of our 2010 truck. All right, once you have everything installed, you can go ahead and tighten down all that hardware. You're gonna need a 14mm socket for the nut on the carriage bolts, and you're gonna need a 13mm socket for the hex head bolts. All right, now that we have our rail in place, you can leave it as is if you're not interested in the steps. Real quick, you can see how nice this provides some pretty good protection underneath the rocker area. But if you wanted to throw the steps on, now would be the time to do so. It's pretty straightforward. Just line the holes in the steps up with the holes on the brackets there. And then once you got that all lined up, you're gonna grab the 19mm bolt and nut and tighten those down as well. All right, once you got the steps tightened down, that'll wrap up the install. Like I said, pretty simple, bolt-on job. And that also wraps up my review of N-Fab's RKR side rails with these nice detachable steps in the black powder coat finish, fitting your 09 to 14 SuperCrew F150. I'm Travis, and thanks for watching. For all things F-150, keep it right here at AmericanTrucks.com.